Hello, everyone. My name is Rahla Sadeghi. I'm a junior student at University of San Francisco. I major in biology and minor in both health studies and chemistry.
Hi everyone, my name is Savine Keobad. I'm a student at UC Davis. I majored in neurobio and Spanish, and we are both part of Iranian Students of California, an organization that consists of numerous Iranian organizations across California. We are part of the Professional Development Committee for ISC, and our goal is to have a panel today consisting of many pre-health students and basically ask them questions to help guide students like us on our pre-health path. Hi, Armin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Would you mind giving us a brief introduction about yourself and where you will be attending this fall?
Hi, Sarveen. Hi, Rahul. Thank you for having me today. My name is Armin. I'm from San Jose, California, and I will be starting UCLA School of Dentistry this fall.
Great, thank you. So I have the dental school application slide that you prepared available here. So I think you're going to be going over the application and giving us a few tips and an introduction about that, right?
Yeah, so majority of today's session will be talking about what like people on Instagram wanted us to talk about, but I just want to take like 5 minutes to go over the application so you know what I'm actually talking about. So when you make your account on AdSense, this is the homepage that you see. It has like 4 sections: personal information, academic history, supporting information, and program material. To make your application, you basically need your DENT PIN, which is the same number you use to register for your DAT. That is the same number that you will use throughout dental school. That is the number that the American Dental Association recognizes you with. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so this is the first section, personal information, which should be pretty straightforward. Just basic information about you, maybe your parent, guardian, race, ethnicity. It's just like any other application that you fill out. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. Next section, please. This is the second section, academic history, which you basically enter the high schools you attended, colleges and universities, transcript entry, and your DAT score, or if you have taken any other standard test. The trickiest part for this section is probably the transcript entry. It is really important for applicants to know that you should list your classes exactly as it is written on your transcript. So for example, at UC Davis, the biochemistry class is listed as Biz 102 for all the students at the university, but on the transcript, it is written as BioSci 102, and it is really important to write it as exactly as it looks like in your transcript, like word by word, space by space, because if you make a little mistake after you submit your application, there will be a hold on your account until you update that at the website, and then they have to verify your courses again, which is gonna take a long time and kind of push your application back. And you want to submit your application as soon as you can because it gives you a better chances of getting interviews at different schools. The standardized test is basically just you basically enter your DAT score, or if you have taken any other tests, that should be pretty easy. You enter your grades section by section and you just move to the next section. Next slide, please.
Great.
So this is the third section, supporting information. This is where you submit your letter of recs in the first section, evaluations, is where you write about your experiences, which is the second section, experiences. I think there is a limit in the number of experiences you can write, but you can mark 6 of your experiences as the most important ones. And those are usually experiences that are more related to dentistry, the ones that actually made you choose dentistry as your future path. So you probably should spend more time on those 6. But what I suggest is to write everything. If you played soccer if you played soccer in college, if you joined a club, nothing is not important because you basically want the schools to know that you are a well-rounded person, applicant. And besides having good grades, good DAT scores, you want to show them that you are a well-rounded person and you have experience in different fields. The third section is achievements. If you have won an award, if you have any special achievement, you can list it here. There's a very short explanation you can provide. And then that's it for this section. And then for licenses, if you have a CPR license, if you have any license that you want the schools to know that you have that license, you can mention it here, write it down, and then I believe it can, if you have, for example, a basic life support license, it can help because it shows to the schools that you have been involved in the field. And then the last section, which is probably the most important section in the supporting information, is personal statement. This is where you spend majority of your time preparing your personal statement. And then in this essay, it should, I believe it's less than a page. So it's not that crazy. It's less than a page, but the schools basically want to know two things. First, why dentistry, why you chose the field. If there's been a specific experience you had that made you choose dentistry as your future career, and why you. So if you have any special ability, if you have, why should the schools choose you? Because what makes you stand out to those schools? So this is about supporting information. And then if we go to the next section, this is a section where you add your schools, the programs you want to apply to. I just put down two programs, example, UCLA and USC. I believe the fee for the schools are, I have it right down. It's $251 for the first school and $108 for every additional school you apply to. But in this section, you basically search the school's name. You can add it as the program you want to apply to. And then if you click on each school, which is the next slide. Okay, so there's three sections. For example, for UCLA, there's home, questions, prereqs. The first section, home, basically gives a summary about the school, maybe shows their mission statement, important links, and what you need to apply to that school. Basic information, there's nothing really you need to do about this section. The second section, which is next slide, is questions. So for questions, this is where some schools, not all of them, want you to complete supplemental questions. For some schools like UCLA, UCSF, they are not so long. It's less than 600 characters. It shouldn't take a long time. But for some schools such as USC, the essay is a bit longer. It's kind of like a secondary essay, secondary personal statement. So make sure you give yourself enough time to get to this section, and before you are done with your application, review just to be able to manage your time. And then the last section is prereqs, which is next slide. So this section is basically all the courses that a school needs you to take before applying. For example, for UCLA is organic chemistry, biochemistry, etc. So basically, you have entered all your courses in the transcript entry in the second section of your application. And here you can say, for example, BioSci 102 is biochemistry at UC Davis. So you list the classes and match them with the prereq that the school wants you to take those classes. So I think that's it about the application. You can close the slide if you want, Sarveen.
Great. Before we moved on, sorry, I had a question. So for the dental school application process, I know you compared the questions, for example, for UCLA to like a secondary application. Do you complete all of those before submitting your overall dental school application, or do you have to wait and answer those supplemental questions?
That's a great question. So for some schools like UCLA, they already give you the supplemental questions, so you can fill them out, just submit them with your application. Some other schools, when you submit your application, they send you an email, congrats, you have passed our first round of acceptance, not acceptance, they just want you to fill out a secondary application. That doesn't mean that you're accepted. They usually send in that email to everyone. It's based, for example, Western University, they send you an email, please complete the supplemental essay. So you write a second essay, which is basically reflects on why you want to choose, for example, Western University. So it depends on the school. Some schools, they want you to fill it out before you submit your application, like UCLA, USC. Some other schools like Western University, they send you a different email. You go on their website and fill out the secondary application. And most schools, almost all of them, they send you an email to pay a secondary fee. For the schools that I apply to, every single one of them, regardless of having a secondary application or not having a secondary application, they wanted me to pay a secondary fee, which is about $100. So make sure, because as long as you don't pay that secondary fee, your application is not complete yet. So the schools want everything from you to consider your application complete. That means letters of rec, transcripts, your grades, the fees, everything needs to be complete so that they can start looking at your application.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to move out of the slide. Thank you for those slides, Armin. And I know we had a few questions from Instagram that the audience had. I believe you have those questions in front of you, correct?
Yeah, so there were some topics that the audience wanted me to talk about, and then after that, we can move to the Q&A which they submitted it to you, and I'm gonna just go over them. So the first topic they wanted me to talk about was, someone asked, talk about what is good to mention on the COVID statement. So the first year that ATSA started, like they added this section to their application was the year that I applied last year. So basically you can write anything, like whatever, however you felt COVID affected you. It can be regarding your family, regarding yourself, school, if you were working, if you were planning to shadow a doctor, you can write whatever you want that relates to COVID and how it affected your application, your preparation for dental school, or you can just write nothing if you don't feel that necessary. On the website it categorizes it to three parts. The first part is academic, second is professional, third is personal. It should be pretty straightforward. I don't think that this is I don't think it's an integral part to your application. It basically just wants to know how COVID affected you and your family and your preparation. The second topic was how to fill the manual dexterity part if I can't think of any manual dexterity. So for this section, manual dexterity can be anything. For me, I've been playing the piano for many years, so I put that down as my manual dexterity, but you can say carving wood, carving soap, cooking, whatever. The most important part is to connect, to relate that field to dentistry. For example, if you put down sewing as one of your manual dexterities, you can just relate it to and say, this helped me to improve my manual dexterity, improve my hand skills to use and be able to work with tools. So you basically just have to think in your daily lives and see what can you relate to dentistry and what can you put down as something that has improved your hand skills. The third question, I believe, was how to obtain all transcripts if I went to many different colleges. There is a section where you can pay a third party to obtain all transcripts and submit it to ATSAS. I didn't use that option to pay someone to fill out your transcript because I trusted myself more than the third party company, because I really don't think anyone cares about your application as much as you do. It shouldn't be hard. You can just go, on your under transcript entry section, ATSAS gives you a code and a website on how to submit your transcripts. You basically have to, for example, for me, I went on UC Davis website, I ordered official transcripts. It takes you to a third-party company where you can order your transcripts. And then on that section, on the receiver section, you can just put American Dental Association. It is listed there. It should be pretty straightforward. And they usually receive it in 2 to 3 weeks and takes them about 3 to 4 more additional days to verify it for you. So it should be straightforward. It doesn't matter how many colleges you attended. I attended 3 community colleges and UC Davis. So I had a lot of colleges on my side, but it wasn't hard. It usually took them less than 5 days to verify everything for me.
Oh, great.
Yep. The next one is how many letters of evaluation is it good to submit? So for most schools, it really depends on the school. Most schools, they want you to get 2 letters of evaluations from 2 science professors, for example, biochemistry or genetics, and 1 from a general dentist. So that's required. And then there is a limit of 4 total letters of rec that you can submit. For example, for Harvard, I know they need 3 from science professors and 1 from a dentist. But for almost all of the other schools that I applied to, they wanted just 2 science professors, 1 dentist. I used the other option to ask one of the specialties that I shadowed. So I had basically 2 dentists and 2 science professors. But it all depends on the school. There's a limit of 4, so you can't submit more than 4. You can ask a committee to write a letter for you. That's not what most of the students do, but for a majority of schools, 2 science professors and at least 1 general dentist.
Perfect.
Yeah. And the next section is how do I write the experiences section? Okay, so for the experiences section, first of all, as I said, try to write everything. Nothing is not important. Everything shows a part of you, a part of your personality. And I think it's really important for the schools to know who you are as a person. Besides the students. So there are different sections, different codes that you can give to your experiences, such as academic enrichment, dental experience, dental shadowing. There is an explanation on the website that what relates to what. For example, it says for dental experience, it is whatever is related to dentistry. You can just click on that. It is very clear. It is pretty straightforward. And then the wording for the section is pretty much what you did, what you learned, and how it relates to dentistry. You don't have to check mark everything for every single experience. For example, I wrote playing soccer and there was no way I could relate that to dentistry. I could list it as leadership, which I did. So try to relate it as much as you can. Try to explain as best as what you did in that during that experience, and then that you should be fine. And then there are 6 more important experiences that you can star them, mark them as important. Spend more time in those and try to use those sections for your dental related experiences, like the experiences that actually made you choose dentistry, or if you have a research, or if you did research at your school, that's also very important.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next section was, oh, for the,
Yeah, before you move on to the next question, I have a question. So do you have any like limits for activities? Like, do you have like a minimum or maximum number of activities that you can include?
I don't believe there is a minimum, but I know there is a maximum. I think there is a maximum of 20 experiences. I'm not sure. It is listed on the website, but the limit for the important experiences is 6. You can't write more than that, but you can, I believe you can write up to 20 experiences if you want. I also have an example for the experiences. This is from one of my friend's application because I couldn't access my application anymore. But for example, for research, she wrote, I just want to mention this so people know how to word their experiences. This is just an example. She wrote, I reviewed more than 100 articles to understand the role of NGF receptor and its downstream pathways to activate KDM4B and DLX5, which lead to osteogenic formation. I identified all relevant scientific resources and provided a summary of findings from all papers to assist with writing the manuscript. Manuscript for the paper is still in preparation. So she basically said what she did and what was her role, and that's basically it. For this one, it is related to dentistry because of the topic of the research, so she didn't have to go an extra mile to relate it. But for experiences that are not given, for example, if you did a specific, because she's a dental student already, this is her essay for applying for residencies. For us undergrads, when you want to apply, you want to shift it more towards dentistry. That's all my advice for this section.
Great.
Then there's another topic. How many programs do I apply and how to pick them? Okay, so it really depends on you. I was pretty comfortable in my scores, so I only applied to 8 programs, which was a bit risky. I usually suggest applying to at least 10 programs, just have a safety net for yourself. But what I suggest is you already know your GPA, you probably know your DAT score, go on different schools' websites and pull up the latest class profile for each school. The class profile basically gives you the average GPA, the average DAT score, the number of male, female in each class. It's a quick summary of the class size, quick summary of the class, and then compare your GPA and your DAT score to the programs. So for example, if the average GPA for a school is 3.6 and you have a 3.5, that doesn't mean that you don't have a chance of getting accepted because that's the average. So there are students who got accepted with a lower GPA. But that gives you a good idea of what the schools are looking for. That's what I did. That's how I chose my schools. And again, I was probably too confident. I chose only 8 schools, but don't take the chance. Try to stay safe and then apply to as many schools. For example, if your DAT score is 19 and you see the average DAT acceptance for a school is 24, you probably don't have a great chance of getting accepted to that particular school. So you might think, why would I waste my money, which is reasonable. But for very small differences, it shouldn't matter that much because your experiences might make you stand out. I have friends who didn't have great stats, but they've been a dental assistant for like 4 or 5 years. So their experience helps them to get accepted to better schools. So yeah, just pull up the average for different schools and then compare your stats to those, and then you can be truthful, be honest with yourself. Say, if I have a chance, why not? I would apply. And also see if you want to live in a particular city. For example, if you don't want to live in Texas, don't apply to Texas schools, because make sure if you get accepted to school, you would like to live there for at least 4 years. So that's also a big important part.
Since you mentioned Texas, do you know if there is a separate application for dental schools in Texas? Because I know for medical schools, Texas is a completely different application.
That's a great question. There is actually. I didn't apply to any Texan schools, but there is a different application, a completely different website for those schools. I have friends who have applied to that to Texan schools. I didn't myself, so I really don't know what the application looks like. But I know that there is a different application, and there's some really good schools in Texas. So if that's what you want, you might as well take a second look at that.
Perfect.
And then share tips on how to look unique on the personal statement. So the personal statement is the name, like you can basically understand what it means. Personal statement, you have to talk about yourself. So if you want the schools to know something specific to know about you, this is the best place to share it. I shared about one of the experiences that led me to choose dentistry and my specific skills. I mentioned playing piano and how that helped me with my hand skills. I mentioned how I'm a fast learner. So whatever you want the schools to know, mention that. And then my tip is to write as much as you can and then start trimming it. Don't keep thinking about, all right, this is my final version of the personal statement. I can't mention this, I can't mention that. Mention everything, and then you can, because you have time. If you start 3-4 weeks before you submit your application, which is pretty tight time frame, I would suggest start earlier. That's what I did, and it was helpful for me for the past 3 weeks. But if you start early, you can write as much as you want, and then start trimming what doesn't feel important to you. And I definitely suggest to have at least a dental student or an advisor to look at your personal statement and read it to you, and just to make sure how it sounds, how the wording is, and if the information are sufficient.
Great.
Yeah. And then how does scores and stats compare to school lists? I think I already addressed this one. Again, go on the websites, pull up the class profile, and try to compare your DAT score and GPA to the averages for the classes, and then that should give you a good idea of where you stand in terms of that specific school. Yeah. All right, I think I have 10 questions where people submitted to you for the Q&A. Should we go over them one-on-one?
Yes, that'll be perfect if you'd like to read them out loud. Up to you.
Okay, so the first question is, how did you apply for schools considering your GPA and DAT score? I think we already talked about this, but again, I went on the website, I compared it to my stats, I compared the averages to my stats. I feel pretty comfortable, so I only applied to 8 schools. I got accepted to most of them, so I think the method kind of worked, but again, don't risk it. If you don't feel comfortable, for example, if the school average is like 3.6 and you're a standard like 3.5, I would say apply to just, you don't know what happens. And some people, you can also compare, for example, if the average DAT score for a school is 20 and then the GPA is 3.4, or your GPA is 3.2 and your DAT score is 26, well, your DAT score kind of explains that you're a good student because you performed really well on the DAT. So just having a lower average than in a specific category, for example, GPA, doesn't mean that you're not going to get accepted. I say if you're close to the averages, apply and see what happens. Because a lot of people talk about the cost of applying. I get it, it's a lot, but compared to the dental school tuition, which is crazy. For example, UOP is 450, for UCLA is about 200,000 for 4 years. That extra 500-600 shouldn't matter that much, because you're going to end up spending much more money, investing much more money in this process. The second question is, what is the most important factor for the dental schools? For example, is it GPA, interview, or resume? So to get invited for interview, you probably need a strong GPA, strong DAT score, and good amount of experiences. I know people with really good stats, 25, 26 DAT, 3.89 GPA, who have not been involved in the field of dentistry at all, who haven't received interviews at many schools. And I know people with more average scores, 3.4 GPA, 20 DAT, who have been involved in the field for the past 4 or 5 years and have interviewed at many schools. So all these factors are important. I can't really say which one is more important. Of course, if you have a terrible DAT or terrible GPA, you probably have a less chance to get into the second part of the cycle. but all of them are important. Try to be as involved as you can. Try to keep your GPA as high as you can, and try to get the best DAT scores you can. But your mental health is just as important. Don't get too invested in the process that you forget about yourself, forget about what you love. You should love the process. You should enjoy the process. Because dental school is going to be much harder than your undergrad journey. So try to figure out what's the best method for you and try to improve your application as much as your health allows you to.
That is such good advice. Thank you for that.
Oh, yes.
Sorry,
Let's-
just going.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go for
sorry to cut you off. Going off on what you said. So if a student has GPA that's on the lower side, so I know I'm pre-med, so I know for pre-med students, if you have a lower GPA, that you can apply to a master's program and get like a graduate school GPA and apply, or there's post-bac programs. Would you recommend that for pre-dental students who don't have as strong of stats?
Yeah, so I believe most of the schools have a GPA and DAT cutoff. I don't know what the cutoffs are, but I know most of the schools have those cutoffs. So if you don't feel comfortable in your GPA, uh, one important thing for students to know is that the schools mostly look at your last 2 years at school. For example, if your first 2 years you have a terrible GPA and then you showed a huge improvement for the last 2 years and you have a great GPA for the last 2 years, that's a good sign because you've shown improvement in your application and the schools notice that. So if you don't have a great GPA, if you don't feel comfortable in your GPA, yeah, master's program is a good idea because you have an additional 1 or 2 years of school where you can improve your GPA. You will have a separate GPA because of your program. And it also, if it's related to dentistry, it can prepare you better for dental school. I know people who have done that and been successful. I have a particular friend who applied 3 times and didn't get a single interview. She did a master's program, great scores, and then she finally got accepted to dental school after 4th year of applying. So that's a great option if you don't feel comfortable in your scores. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
And then another question was that, what is your advice to an undergrad student in biochemistry major who wants to attend either medical or dental school? I think it's the advice that you just said. Care about your mental health, about your physical health. What I notice about myself is that if I don't work out 4 or 5 times a week, I don't feel like myself. I start going insane. So that is important because you want to be at your best. The grades matter, your DAT score matters, but not for the cost of your health. My advice is to try to hang out with your friends, try to work out, try to be as healthy as you can, and try to prioritize your school and your DAT and all those factors that are important to dental school. One of the reasons that dental school care about your experiences is that because they want to know how you manage your life. If you have only been studying for the past 4 years, or if you've been studying, going out, meeting people, if you're a social person, those are important factors. Because when you become a dentist, you're meeting people, you need to have good social skills. So those are important. And then care about your mental health, about your physical health. So that's my advice. The next question is, do you recommend applying for any schools that are not accredited? So I believe those are the schools who are not known by the American Dental Association. I don't know any of those schools in the US. I think they probably means they're talking about schools out of the state. Those schools have their own challenges. I think you have to take different tests. I think you have to attend 2 years of dental school in the US after graduating from those schools. If you have the chance of attending a school in the United States, I definitely recommend that because you don't have to go the extra mile to get approved by the Dental Association after graduating. But if that's not an option for you, why not? But I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. So please don't quote me. Do your research. I honestly don't have a lot of information about those schools, but do your research. If that's a viable option to you, why not? The next question is, what is the timeline for early submission of application? Oh, I say the sooner the better. If you can do it on the first day, do it. But it is important to submit a strong application. I was thinking about submitting my application on the first day the application opened, but I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel my personal statement was there. I didn't think my experiences were there. So I took an extra 2 weeks to improve my application, and that is really important. So submitting a strong application not so early is better than submitting a weak application on the first day. So the sooner the better, but really like having a strong application is extremely important. But if your application is ready, don't second guess it. If you feel comfortable, submit it as soon as you can, because the application process is on rolling basis. So if they receive your application, they're not going to wait for my application. They will take a look at your application. If you are a strong applicant, they will give you an interview. So that's really important for students, especially students with average stats, to apply as early as they can.
Great. And when does the application open for dental school?
It's different every year. For my year, I believe it was July 1st or end of June. But if it's a quick Google search for them, it should be pretty easy to find it. But it's usually mid-June or early June or early July, in that time frame.
Great.
The next question is, how much money should I set aside for the application process? So submitting the applications is expensive. I pull out the fees for the first school and access is $251. For each additional school is $108. So if you apply for 10 schools, which is what most students do, it's going to sum up to $1,223. But there's also $100 additional secondary fee for most of the schools. So that's for 10 schools, that's an extra 1,000. So it's going to end up to being about $2,200. It is expensive, but again, compared to the tuition you're going to pay for dental school, it's not that bold. Don't risk on applying to only 4 or 5 schools, because you never know what happens. I know students with extremely great stats who didn't get invited to interview at a specific school, where students with more average stats did get invited. So don't risk it. Apply to as many schools as you feel comfortable, and apply to those schools that you know you will be attending in case you got accepted.
Amazing.
Yeah. Then the next question is, what should I do if my application is ready, but still waiting for my recommender to submit their letter of rec? I feel you. Sometimes your professors don't feel like submitting your letter of rec when you ask them to. That's why I usually suggest students to ask for the letter of recs at least 6 months to a year before they start filling out their application. If you can, ask your professor, ask the dentist to write the letter for you and just submit it when you ask them to. I made a mistake. I didn't start emailing my professors until 3 weeks or a month before I submit my application, which was very stressful for me. I messaged about 50 professors and got respond by like 20 of them responded, and then 5 of them ended up writing the letters. And then I chose 2 of them to submit their letters. So it's really important to start the process early. It can be really stressful. And then especially now with COVID and online classes, the professors are extremely busy. It's even hard for them. So try to ask for the letter of recs as soon as you can. And that's my advice. So if you have your application ready and then professor haven't submitted your letter of rec yet, try emailing them. If you can't call them, try pushing it. Don't think it's going to look bad, because this is important for you. If you submit your application soon, you have a better chance of getting accepted. So you have to write that in your email, let your professor know that this is important in my future. So please, if you can, submit it as soon as you can.
Armin, you mentioned that you read your recommendation letters, right?
I didn't know.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then how did you choose out of 5?
So there were 2 professors that actually knew me better. One of them I did research for, and I sent the emails to the classes that I got A's in, because again, I was so late. I didn't really have the luxury of choosing my professors. Less than half of them responded to me. 4 or 5 of them like followed up on writing the letter. And then I felt more comfortable with 2 of my professors, and that was the limit for me, because I wanted to submit another one for my dentist and another one from the specialist that I shadowed. But the 2 of them that I felt more comfortable and I felt they knew me better, those were the ones that I chose. And that's really important, because some students think that the name of the professor is important. Like if you get the letter of rec from your anatomy professor is better than if you get it from, I don't know, genetics professor. That is not the case. Ask the letters from the person that knows you the best, because the schools just want you, trust me, they're not going to Google your professor's name. They don't have the time to do that. So ask for the just ask for it from the professors that know you better, and then you feel more comfortable with them. Thanks for asking. And then the next question is, what if I am planning on taking my DAT after submitting my application? I don't recommend that because I really think, first of all, you don't know how you will perform or how you will do on your first DAT, on your first attempt, because you might get hard questions and not do as good as you thought. I say take your DAT at least a year or 6 months before you apply, so you can give yourself a chance to take the DAT twice if you have to. And also, if you take your DAT after you submit your application, the schools will wait for your DAT scores to start looking at your application. So there's no point of submitting your application because they're not going to take a look at it. If you have your DAT scores ready, submit it. Some people will take the DAT once, they don't feel comfortable, they submit the application, but they ask the schools to take the DAT again. That is okay, but again, the schools are not going to take a look at your application until you submit your second set of scores. So try to take your DAT before submitting your applications so you can submit it as soon as you can, because that gives you a better chance. And also you give yourself the chance of taking the DAT twice or 3 times if you have to. The next question is, what is a strong application consist of? It really depends on the school. It really depends on the school. I know, for example, for UCLA, they really care about research. That's something that I had, and they mostly talked about over my interview. Uh, a strong application, in my opinion, is good scores, well-rounded applicant, good DAT scores, and then good, by good, I mean compared to the school average that you can find online. So if you're above the average, you have a pretty good chance of getting accepted. For example, if the DAT average for UCLA is 22, if you have 22 and above, you have a pretty good chance of getting invited for an interview. So if you have everything above average, that's great. If you have enough experiences, enough shadowing hours, enough volunteer hours, enough research credits, or like all those stuff matter. And then those are what make your application strong. That's it. Yeah.
Great. Just a final question. Is there like a limit to the number of times that you could take the DAT, or would you recommend not taking it more than a certain number of times for the specific cycle?
So there is a limit of 3. After taking it for the 3rd time, you have to email them and ask for permission to register for another one. I don't know how that works. I don't know what are the chances of getting the allowance to take the DAT again. If you have a decent score in your first attempt, I was comfortable in my score, but you always second guess yourself. So I was actually thinking, I had a 98th percentile score, and I was thinking about taking it again because I didn't trust it myself. And I think that's the case for every applicant. If you have a pretty decent score, if you are above the average for schools, if you are there or above or even on the average for the schools, I recommend not taking it again, because if you do take it again, the schools want to see a huge improvement. So if your score for the first attempt is 20, I would say the schools need you to get at least 22 or 23 to show that sufficient improvement for taking it again. So I would say do as best as you can on your first attempt. But if you don't get the grade that you want, that's okay. You can always take it for the second or third time. If you, for example, if UCSF is your dream school and their DAT average is like 21, 22, and you have an 18, I would say do it again. It's worth studying for it again, but you need at least a 22 or 23 to show that improvement. So you probably have to work twice as hard over your second attempt because they need to see that improvement.
Great. Well, thank you so much for going over the process and answering all the questions that everyone had. Best of luck fall with UCLA. We're so proud to have someone like you in the Iranian community.
Thank you for having me. It was a great honor for me. I'm glad to help people. I'm glad to join the IC. I know you and Rahul have been working extremely hard to make this happen. So thank you guys. And then one last thing, if people want to ask questions, if they want to reach me, they can reach me on Instagram or email. I can type my Instagram. I have an extremely long last name.
I can put the slide that you had included in the PowerPoint that you made at the end of this video.
So feel free to reach me, and you can reach me both in Farsi or English. I'm fluent in both. So yeah, I'll be glad to help.
Great. Thank you so much again for everything.